All right, y'all. What's happening? This is Talking Tech with 50, or Talk Tech with 50, or Talk Tech with Randall, however you may know me. What's going on? And there's a very interesting subject that I want to discuss. So on Clubhouse, there were a lot of discussions when Clubhouse came out on how do people get into cybersecurity. There were a lot of college students asking how to get into cybersecurity, and then a lot of adults asking how to get into cybersecurity. And there were people on these stages that were giving, their take on it, but they were giving like a one-size-fits-all solution. And there is no one-size-fits-all solution. That's the crazy part. There is, but there isn't. All right. What you would tell a college student when how to get into cybersecurity is not going to necessarily apply to somebody who's in their 20s or 30s. They're out of college. They have a family. They have kids. They have bills. That same advice isn't going to work. Those credits don't transfer. All right. And so on these Clubhouse rooms, there were plenty of people saying, well, you don't need certs to get into cybersecurity. All right. Let's address that. How old are you, sir or ma'am? Oh, I'm 40 or 50. Okay, cool. When I got into IT in about 07 or 08, you really didn't need certifications like that. Like all your high level, like architects, they didn't have certifications. Some might have a CCNA. There was some CCNPs back then. There were CCIEs back then, but large in part, you really didn't need a certification, nowadays, or back then, like how nowadays you do. That's a totally different era. Nowadays, people are looking for those certifications. But that pressure is coming from the hiring managers or the C-level execs or whoever is writing, that job description to give to HR. Okay, so things have changed from when a lot of these older people got into IT. All right. And then you have the younger people who got into IT. Oh, well, I got in without certs. Okay, cool. They more than likely got in through college. They co-opt. They intern. There's nothing wrong with that. That honestly is the way that I would prefer young people get into IT. However, it's kind of dangerous. Here's why. So if you co-op or intern, you don't come into IT having to know something already or have something like a cert already. You don't have to do that. That is the benefit of coming in through an internship or co-op program. However, it could be to your detriment. You then, once you get your internship or your co-op, you're at the mercy of whatever IT department or whatever engineer or whoever you're shadowing with. Whatever they have you doing. And not all IT departments are created equal. There are some that are really good, and there are some that really shouldn't exist. And it happens. It happens. You've got really, really sharp people that have worked their way up. They're well versed in not just one thing. You've got people who are very specialized in one thing. Well, everybody has a specialty, but that's pretty much that one thing that they know. And then you have people that just so happen to get into that position somehow. And those people that just somehow got into that position, it's either because they knew somebody or they interned, unfortunately. That's what I mean by the detriment. So when you come into IT, I'm gonna just, umbrella it right now. When you come into IT via co-op or internship, whether you learn something or not, you're going to be able to get another job. That's just how IT works. IT is a prior experience field. All right? You will be able to get another job, whether you actually could do it or not. And see, what a lot of people do is they don't put necessarily what they did on their resume, but they'll just put like the tools that they worked with or the tools that were in the department that they worked with. Not necessarily that they did anything with those tools. Because here's the crazy thing. HR isn't asking them about those tools. So they're going to pass through HR's keyword filters and they're going to be submitted to the hiring manager. Most hiring managers aren't technical. They don't know what a lot of that stuff, takes or entails, and that's fine. Sometimes. But you get a lot of people that slip through the cracks like that. They end up getting that job and they don't know anything. They get saved by other people on their team because they didn't know anything and they didn't learn anything. And if this said person that is on their second job now that started out as an intern, and if they don't feel the need to learn anything or do anything, then they're going to accelerate in their career. Especially if they're in a technical role and they didn't care to learn anything, they're going to be a detriment to their team. Sorry. But that's on the bad side, of people coming in, co-oping and interning. So I've met quite a few people that, came in as interns or co-ops in a very squared away organization. And they were trained by some of the best, at their respective roles, in their respective job duties. And so you can come in as a 19 or a 20-year-old or 21-year-old, a beast in forensics, a beast in networking, a beast at dealing with the SIM. You can come in a legit beast, but again, that only depends on your mentor and who you were shadowing. All right. Because to me, that's a direct reflection of you. I don't want to toot my own horn. But I had a mentee at my job, an intern at my job. He wanted to get into network security and he wanted to get paid. Long story short, he's 23. He's over 100K already. I told him exactly what to do. Same thing I recommend to y'all. Same thing I recommend to my little brother. He got his Security Plus. Why? Because for a lot of organizations, nowadays, it's a requirement that you have a security certification. And the Security Plus is, like the entry level one. I told him to get that. I told him that The backbone of security is networking. It's not a good idea to operate a firewall if you're not, sound networking, because you break stuff. And even worse, you don't know how to fix it. You don't know how to troubleshoot. I came into cybersecurity from network engineering. The basis of network engineering is troubleshooting. Whether you're CCNA or CCIE, Cisco architect, if that even still is a thing. The only difference is how good they are at troubleshooting and building stuff. If you're sound networking, you can easily do cybersecurity because you understand how everything moves through a network. If you understand how it moves, you know how to secure it. Or from an operational standpoint, if there's an issue internally, you can discern whether this is a networking issue or a security issue. A security person that doesn't know networking isn't gonna, more times than not, have the ability to troubleshoot to that level. When somebody who comes in from the networking side, they know how to troubleshoot that. And it's not like it's some secret technique. It's just trace routes. And even though a trace route is something that is basic, it's a basic Windows command. That kind of troubleshooting isn't something that's standard in IT. Being able to run a trace route. See what the next hop is. Seeing why traffic is stopping at that hop. Is it us or is it them on the other end? Can you tell that? A person who's solid at networking, they can. All right. And so that's why I told the intern, get your CCNA. Even though he might not work with Cisco products, he might work with Checkpoint, Palo Alto, Fortinet, Juniper, he might work with whatever. But there is an assumption in IT that if you know Cisco, you can work with anything. And for the most part, they're absolutely right. Because everything else is easier than Cisco, with the exception of Palo Alto. Because Palo Alto out of the box comes with all the bells and whistles. And then not to mention, most of your Cisco devices, there's their command line. Sure, you can get to your ASA through ASDM. For certain. But when it comes to troubleshooting, you're in the command line. And with Cisco, by default, you are always in the command line. So you know how to run your troubleshooting commands. You know how to run your show commands to see how things are configured. You know how to troubleshoot. Supposed to. You're supposed to know how to troubleshoot. And so what I did for my intern, not my intern, but for the intern, I wrote him about 30 something Cisco show commands, that he can use to, see what's going on the device. I wrote him about 30 iOS commands. I wrote him some ASA commands because those are slightly different. If you're on a Cisco router switch, you could do a show IP interface brief. But in the ASA, it's a show interface IP brief. Small things like that. Show CDP neighbor, those credits transfer. But yeah, I wrote all that stuff down for them. You want to see what's going on with your VPN tunnels in the ASA? Show crypto IPsec SA peer. See what's going on with it. I wrote down all those commands and he went home and studied them. And he went and got his CCNA. And he asked me, hey, Randall, what's something else that I can get? So I told him, cloud. All right. See, nowadays, IT infrastructures, they're moving to cloud. Because virtualization, it was always a thing. VMware was around when I first got into IT. But it's expensive. Citrix was always around. But you had to maintain that stuff. You had to maintain those servers. If your servers were in the data center, you had your data center infrastructure there. You still had to run your own power. You still had to make sure your stuff was locked away in the cage. You still had to do your server maintenance. You still had to do your networking. There's end of support, end of sale for the hardware that stuff is on. There's compatibility issues. There's storage. All that stuff gets expensive. And sure, large companies, like that actually care about their IT budget, that's cool. For smaller companies, though, VMware licensing can kill an IT budget. And so here comes cloud. Infrastructure as a service. Oh, don't worry about your bare metal. We got you. You want to spend up a server? Here are the AMIs. You just build it and go. You don't have to maintain any of the hardware. Power's not an issue. Availability isn't an issue. All that stuff is transferred over to your cloud provider. It's all transferred to Microsoft. It's all transferred to Amazon. It's all transferred to Google. Everything's going to cloud. Exchange servers are becoming a thing of the past. Now it's Office 365. Everything is going to the cloud. And for that reason, I told the intern, yo, get your AWS solutions architect. You have a CCNA, which means you understand the VPC in AWS. I showed you what a default route is. So you understand everything that's in a route table. I walked you through the firewall. So you understand access lists. You understand security groups. You understand EC2 instances. You know Linux. Go ahead and get your AWS. And he got it. I ain't gonna hold you. I failed my first attempt. Man, I failed my first attempt. And it's crazy because I took the test at home due to the pandemic and all that. So I took the test at home. And so usually in the testing centers, you can get up and go to the restroom. However, when you're at home, you know, you don't have you don't have that luxury. You know, you ask the proctor, like, yo, can I go to the bathroom? Nah, you go, you know, and I couldn't hold it anymore. So I was like, you know what? I'll just take this $150 L. I missed about a couple points. You know, I'll go back and get it. You know, but cloud. And that's the importance of having somebody to give you proper guidance in this field. You know, he's still learning. Because of his skill set, you know, he's pretty much set. When you know networking, you know IT, and you can work in anything. You can go to cyber. You can do almost anything. Can you code? Can you, you know, even if you don't code, I don't code. It don't matter. And he's got cloud. He's set. And how long would that take you without certifications? Because I can tell you for sure, unless you're kissing up to your higher management, it's going to take you some years. All right. So if you're watching this and you're outside of college, my strong recommendation, get your Security Plus. Even if you're not going into cybersecurity, get your Security Plus. Hey, but get your Security Plus. Not an A plus, not a Network Plus, a Security Plus. Start there. You know, that's the level 1 DoD 8570 IAT level 1 certification. Most of the places that you're going to work, that you're going to want to work, you know, they have standards that themselves as the company, they have to hold themselves to. The Security Plus certification checks that box. Which means you qualify for that job. And then the next thing that I would recommend is, you know, some skills. Learn about Wireshark and everything that's inside of it. You know, be strong in operating systems, you know, your Windows, your Linux. Become fundamentally sound. Becoming fundamentally sound is really what propels you in this field. It's not just certifications. The certifications go alongside of it. But if you're fundamentally sound, you'll go far. What a lot of people don't know is that there really isn't a big, the only experience is a difference between a senior level engineer and somebody who's just getting started. But the root of troubleshooting anything for a high-level engineer is the fundamentals. The CCIE is very versed at ping and trace routes. You know, they know Windows. They know Linux. If you know the fundamentals, you know, it's a broad spectrum. If you know the fundamentals, you can go far. So learn the fundamentals. Learn what Task Manager is. Services. Folder permissions. Become familiar with command prompt. Doing an IP config, ping, traceroute, netstack. Same thing with Linux. If you have a Mac is Unix based. So like a lot of the Linux commands that you would use, you can use there. Instead of ipconfig, ifconfig. You know, if you want to find your default gateway, it's not an ipconfig. I think you gotta do a show route or a route and then pipe grep default. But you still like ping you still ping the same. Netstat is still pretty much the same. The only difference is it's like if you're using a Mac, you want to be able to navigate your folder structure just by using the command line, just by using CD. You know, being able to use the cat command. Knowing how to touch a folder, make directory, touch a file. You know, these things like that, those are the basics. You know, if you get that down, you'll be set. I'll give you an example. So there's a lot of times where, you know, you may have to troubleshoot a server. You know, and not even necessarily the server per se, but something that the server is doing. So, perfect example. So, I'll use... Alright, so we had a Tenable server, right? And for some reason, the security center wasn't connecting with the Nessus scanner. All right. And so it was a Linux device. Spoiler alert. All your servers and network devices are going to be Unix or Linux based. In IT, if it's not Windows, it's Unix or Linux based. That's why I'm stressing the importance of Linux. And it's not that you need like some course or something. You know, just become familiar. You probably only need about like 20 commands, if that. You probably don't need to run all these recursive, you know what I mean? Like it really depends on the job. You know, but across the board, like if you know what PS is or top or tail, you know, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Knowing how to use the ls command in chmod, you'll be all right. And so the Tenable server, you know, the rep on the phone was like, yo, so you have to go to this directory and there are logs. We need you to send those logs to us. And what they're going to give you is they're going to give you a path. And so using that cd command in Linux, you have to navigate to that path, make sure that log is there. Does that folder have the right permissions? ls-la, see what permissions it has. If it doesn't, do a chmod, change those folder permissions. So now I have to get that file, download it to my computer, and then upload it into the Tenable case. Boom. WinSCP, port 22, log in, navigate to the file, download it onto the computer, upload it to the site. You know, it's the small things in IT. It's the small things that lead to the big things. But you got to understand the small stuff first. And that is what I recommend, you know, if you want to get into cybersecurity. Get really good at the small stuff. You know that IP addresses, their source and destination IP addresses, their source and destination port. That makes it easier to look at a Wireshark. Understanding the TCP handshake and the TLS handshake makes it way easier to understand the Wireshark. You'll know what SYN, SYNAC, and ACK is. You'll know what a TCP reset is. You'll know what established in time wait is when you check the connection table in NetStat. But you also see it in the Wireshark. It's the basics. Because the basics lay the foundation for whatever path you're trying to go down. You're going to need those basics whether you decide to go cyber, cloud, state networking, you want to do Citrix, VMware, wireless, it don't matter. You're going to need the basics. And so that's what I recommend you guys do. All right. Get your Security Plus. You know, become familiar with Wireshark. Become familiar with your Windows operating system. And yeah, be a student, learn. And network. Network with those in the field. There's plenty of people trying to get people into the field, but you got to network. I didn't get into IT because I co-opted or intern. I didn't get into IT because I had certifications. I got into IT because I called this recruiter, think at either Randstad or Tech Systems. You know, a guy named Scott and a guy named Jim. I talked with Jim. I said, I know a little something about computers. I'm trying to get a job. And he said, Randall, I don't think you'll be a good fit for this position. We've all heard it. Right then and there, his computer started having issues. And I was able to walk him through how to fix his issue. And he said, Randall, even though I said you may not be a good fit for this job, you can definitely do this job. I started the next day. You know, it was IT contract. I think it was Tech Systems or Randstad. So it's like, you know, that kind of stuff happens, you know, like you can start like the next day. 2 days from then. And at that point, you know, I barely knew how to turn on a computer. I knew how to configure a switch. I knew what VLANs were. I knew what an IP address was. But I didn't know the basics. But I can tell you what. On the first day, I knew almost nothing. By the third day, I was already on a special team. And we went to only special assignments that where people were having network issues. But I knew how to troubleshoot a computer. I was pretty okay. Not as good as I was when I had my system admin job, but I was okay. You definitely have to network. Let people know your intentions. Certifications let people know that you're serious and that you take your career serious. So you gotta let people know. But yeah, that's how to get into cybersecurity. And one last thing that I will say. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but it's easier in IT. It's easier to pivot to a position than it is to get into a position. What I mean is it's easier to get into cybersecurity from a help desk position or a network position than it is to kick the door into cybersecurity. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but what I am saying is your first job doesn't have to be cybersecurity. It's fine if it isn't, because you get a chance to learn something else from a different angle. And so when you do get to cybersecurity, you'll understand better what's going on from the user standpoint, from the network standpoint. And those credits transfer. You got to remember, like, cybersecurity at the end of the day, it's just security, but from the Windows perspective, from the networking perspective, and it's combined and monitored and reported on and acted on. So yeah, that's how you get into cybersecurity. I'd love to hear what you guys think. If you think that I'm full of fluff, leave me a comment below. Like, subscribe. And this is Talking Tech with 50. I'll holler at you.